Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
And welcome everybody to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and I've got a very special guest with us today, Stephen Ezell. Stephen is the founder and CEO of Truly Free Home and Truly Free, which is an online marketplace for all kinds of healthy products. We'll get into that whole story, but welcome to the podcast, Stephen.
Jeff, I am excited for this conversation, man.
Likewise. You've got a fascinating story, but let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up? What was your family like? Were you always an entrepreneur? What was happening in your household growing up?
My mom actually brought me to a doctor early on in my life. I was diagnosed genetically unemployable. So I've been, I guess, an entrepreneur since birth. But was raised by a single mom in the South Bronx. We kind of fled my dad for safety reasons when we were 10. So my mom did the best she can, working around the clock. Raised by a single mom in the South Bronx, moved to the North Bronx when I was 10. And, Bronx kid. Now I live on a farm in northern Michigan, so I'm the only redneck farmer from the Bronx, But, humble beginnings and moved on up, lived in New York City and was in the restaurant business after school, and left the restaurant industry, moved to northern Michigan 15 years ago, 2010, and now I'm not in the restaurant business anymore.
Gotcha. So that's a big move, right? From the Northeast, New York, that whole area, out to the farmland. We'll get to that transition, but start it out for us. How did you get from the East Coast to the Midwest?
So when I was 11, like I said, we were 10. We did a midnight run for safety reasons to get away from my dad, and worked out to be a phenomenal story at the end. But that part of the story was a little rough. So I'll never forget my mother's brother, my Uncle Frank. We took all of our clothes and whatever we could in garbage bags, and we just kind of chucked it in the back of his truck. My Uncle Frank was a fruit peddler in New York City, so he had a fruit truck. So we loaded the back of his truck on New Year's Eve of 1989, turned 1990. And I'll never forget, we got to our new apartment on the north side of the Bronx. And as he was, we finished loading up, and we closed the door, and he looked at me and he says, "Well, now you're the man of the house now. You guys have a good night." And it kind of stuck with me. So I did what I guess, what men were supposed to do. So that summer, I turned 11 years old, and I went to work full time. A friend of the family owned a restaurant in the South Bronx called Yolanda's, right by the old Yankee Stadium. And so I was raised in this little Italian restaurant in the South Bronx called Yolanda's. It was now a third generation. I think their family finally sold. The third generation sold that restaurant. But after grammar school and into high school, I'd go to take a taxi or the bus to work, and one of the owners would drive me home at dark 30 at the end of the night. And I was raised in the restaurants. Worked as a cook, a chef, a bartender, waiter, the whole 9 yards, and then bounced around a bunch. In my late teens to a few restaurants, and I wound up owning my first restaurant when I was 19, and built a really cool restaurant career in New York City. And I thought that's what I was going to do the rest of my life. But it was really empty. It was really shallow, and it was hard. It was hard, building a marriage and being a dad. We started having kids, and 2009 got an incredible education when the banks crashed and went to zero the first time. And we hit the restart button and sold everything and moved to northern Michigan. My wife is from Michigan, and started a new life in northern Michigan, which is a little bit of a change of pace from New York City, just a little bit, change.
Like the total opposite. This is like a Netflix special about. I think they made that special actually in the '70s called Green Acres. But anyway, that's a whole nother old reference. But
Yeah.
so what'd you do? So you move out there. Starting over. How do you do that?
Um, well, when you're at zero, you have lots of options. And although when the first time we went to zero, I knew that it was going to work together for the good, and I knew one day I'd look back and be grateful for that part of the journey. It just really sucked when you're in the middle of it,
Yeah.
and right before that whole like reboot session, my we have 5 kids. My oldest son, when he was a 3-week-old infant, broke out in this horrific rash, and it was because of store-bought laundry detergent.
Mm.
And it kind of set Amy and I, my wife and I, on this quest of, well, if laundry detergent can make our kids sick, what else is in the home, or
Mm.
what's in the laundry, what's on the kitchen sink, what's in the pantry. So from that point on, from 2008 on, we lived a very eco crunchy life, way before being green and crunchy was cool.
All right.
And was very passionate about ingredients and sourcing and learning about things. So we moved to Michigan. Hit the restart button. My first experience online, I took my fishing boat apart in pieces and sold the parts on eBay, and that was our startup budget to move to Michigan. Was whatever I made on eBay and a little bit of Craigslist. And we came here. I did some advisory work, landed on our feet, and then started getting itchy again. That whole like genetically unemployable thing kicked in, and I met this this grandma selling laundry soap at the farmers market, all eco-friendly and hypoallergenic, and she's looking for an investor. So I wound up buying this soap company in northern Michigan. Didn't know anything about it, about consumer or CPG products or retail, or really I didn't know much about anything other than I had this knack for selling things, and I liked the hustle of selling, and bought this company, failed at absolutely everything we tried in our early years, and pivoted online in 2015. Didn't know anything about the web, but I was back to zero again for the second time, and building a website was my last-ditch effort to save our company. Built it, found out that shipping 4 pounds and 50 ounces of laundry detergent from Traverse City, Michigan, around the country cost about $14.
Yeah.
We were planning on selling the product for $15. So I knew
Huh.
that was the go out of business strategy. And so, they say is it necessity is the mother of invention,
Right.
and invented refillable cleaning products back in 15. No one ever did that before. So we pioneered this kind of new delivery system for cleaning products. And now that's, that brand is called Truly Free Home. And it's one of the largest non-toxic chemical manufacturers in the country, and
Mhm.
has grown to pretty significant scope and scale. But it all started off with one sick kid and a mission, and now is changing millions of homes all over the world.
You referenced, all things work for the good, and for our Bible nerds, they know that's a Bible reference, Romans 8:28. But where did the faith components intersect with your life?
Yeah, it's good. So, I was raised as a fairly agnostic Catholic kid. Went to Catholic school. Actually, I was really was very profitable. I was an altar boy, and I found out that if I signed up for all the Italian weddings or funerals, I made really good tips. And so was raised in a fairly agnostic, non-practicing Catholic home, and after spending all my grade school and high school years in Catholic school, kind of fled away from faith in a big way. And if I was out on my boat or out in nature, I felt like I was connected to God, and that was like it at best.
Yeah.
And I met my wife, and we were dating very early on. We had lots of very heated debates around faith,
Hmm.
and I don't remember what the bet was, but I lost some benign bet that if whatever the bet, maybe it was like if there's a parking lot in front of the store, it was something so simple, then you'll come to church with me this weekend. I said, all right, fine. If there's whatever the bet was, I really forget.
Right.
And we did, and I was like, wow, this was really incredible, because what I'm used to going to church was a lot different. People were
Yeah.
dancing and, you know, singing, and I'm like, wow, this is a lot different than what I'm used to. And I felt really motivated at the end. I was like, wow, that's cool. Like, and at the time I was studying leadership and self-help and all of those
Mm.
types of, influence strategies. And the next week we went back. I'm like, man, I said, God, if you're real, and if that guy could do that thing to me again, I said, I promise I'll come back again.
Hmm.
And I realized that next week that it really wasn't that guy, that it was the Lord, and it was, Holy Spirit talking to me.
Yeah.
And so I walked the walk, I knelt to kneel, I cried my cry, I prayed the prayer, and never looked back, really. And I have a hard time with moderation, Jeff. So actually, this past Sunday, I just got awarded my PhD in theology. So
Wow.
that was
Congratulations.
thank you. And, went all in on the scriptures, and I taught myself back in 2008, 9, and 10, how to study and read through Hebrew and Greek so I can look at the original text. So I just nerded out on the scriptures, because they are it is the word of God. And everyone thinks that, which is true, that our company, like Truly Free Home, represents a home of non-toxic chemicals and senseless plastic. And that's true. And that trulyfree.com, this decentralized social marketplace, is about free speech and, the free market and, people voting freely with their dollars. And that's true. But the reason why our company is truly free is because there was a man that came a couple thousand years ago and hung on a tree for me and set me free. And now I just get to wake up every day. I work my tail off so that I can hear my Father say one day, good and faithful servant. And so faith is the absolute center of what we do around here. We're a faith-friendly company. We don't, there's no prerequisites to come work here or shop here. We don't, thump anybody. But I would be remiss in not saying why our company is called Truly Free.
Love it. Yeah. Works on multiple levels. And
Yeah.
just for the nerds like me, what was the doctoral thesis? What was the main thrust of your studies
So
at the end of the day?
my thesis was on the taxonomy of the 7 churches of Revelation.
Wow.
I took a very light, easy topic. So the thesis centers around that although 6 of the 7 churches had a very strong cultural and historical footprint and significance, that the real type and shadow, the patterns, the metaphor of the 7 churches is our pattern and our journey of overcoming from faith to faith and glory to glory. So
Hmm.
there's a few hundred pages of nerding out in there. If you're interested, I'm happy to send it over to you, Jeff.
Sounds like another podcast.
It's another podcast.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's you're definitely all in on all these fronts, and then you pivoted to kind of creating this social platform. Why don't you talk about kind of the innovation around that
Yeah.
business?
So as I was coming up in my ecom build a brand journey and going from 0 to 9 figures, I saw that there was just a war being waged against brands and small business owners like me. And it's harder to acquire customers than ever. There was this thing in our country called free speech. It was a great idea once, and we saw that very premise being challenged, especially since the launch of COVID, and how free speech isn't free. And now there's a very small populace of humans that really at scale get to determine what speech is allowed to be disseminated to a population. And seeing what kind of these big tech marketplaces do to small business owners with stealing data and pirating their information and categories and private labeling products just like theirs. So I just saw this very complicated ecosystem in the auspice of capitalism. We're seeing this really crony capitalist state evolve, where a small group of people can buy and influence the legislation that really favors, again, a small populace of businesses. And for all these reasons, I just got pissed. Jeff. I just said,
Yeah.
what if there was a marketplace where a real small business owner, real innovator, the real engine of not only the U.S. economy but globally, what if they can acquire a customer and keep the customer, not worry that their data would be stolen and pirated to a foreign hack, where like 50 some odd percent of the Instagram reels that are being produced on Instagram are now synthetic,
Wow.
right? And again, there were some people that wrote this thing called free speech and founded a country upon it. But I don't think they meant free speech for prompts and for artificially intelligent robots.
Hmm.
And what scares me, and again, we're big advocates and leverage AI within our ecosystems in order to really empower humans to be more efficient and more effective. However, I don't know a world where our children can be on social and being taught by robots is a good thing. And so I got very concerned, and I said, well, if somebody's not going to do something about it, I might as well. So we sent off on this crazy venture for the last 4 years, and just recently launched trulyfree.com. So it's social and it's commerce and it's live shopping, because people want to know who they're voting with their dollars with. And so we built this creator economy where small businesses and thought leaders and creators and consumers could all meet in a way where everyone wins. So we just launched this thing a few months ago, and I got another tiger by the tail here. It's growing incredibly, and I think so many small business owners and creators are like, this is their future, which is surreal, Jeff, because 4+ years ago when I dreamt up this idea and I felt like God downloaded it to me, I'm like, hey, one day we're going to be a real place for, a small business owner will look at us as their next big opportunity. And now that it's happening, it's really surreal.
I mean, one thing that when we were talking before, you're telling me about the business before we started recording a few weeks ago, one of the things that kind of resonated to me was a marketplace where you as the platform are not getting in the way, but maybe facilitating conversation directly between the customer and the brand.
Yep.
So when somebody comes, and I've been playing around with it and ordering some things, when a customer orders something, the relationship is with the vendor, not with the platform, right? So
Correct.
kind of creating that free relationship. Can you talk a little more about
Sure.
the importance of
Because
that?
I think the consumer, I believe the consumer wants convenience. The consumer wants the ability to shop and search. They want to see reviews. They want to know who else has purchased. They want to know, like, can I trust the product? And if I'm not happy,
Yeah,
can I get my money back?
right.
Because so many brands and small businesses, they really hurt the consumer. And I think that's why, like, these major marketplaces, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Etsy's, to a smaller extent, really are great for the consumer, because like I can store, and
Yeah,
my payments are secure, and they know my address, and I can only click a couple buttons and I can get my product. And if I'm not happy, I click one button and the UPS driver will either pick it up, or I could drop it off at the local whatever store and I can get my money back.
exactly.
So, like, well, what if we created that economy where the consumer is protected and the consumer feels safe, but where the brand now, who spends all this money on acquiring customers, can remarket to the customer.
Yeah,
And so now we are just this facilitator where, the brand gets to give these great deals and options to the consumer. Consumer buys, and now if the brand has it's 4th of July campaign, or if it's Black Friday promotion, they have the ability, if the consumers opted in, could say, hey, here's content, here's education, here's videos, here's the biggest deal. And now the brand and the consumer could build this relationship. And now we just sit in the middle and we create this ecosystem where brands and influencers, creators, thought leaders, like real humans, not the artificial ones, can like collaborate. And because we pass all this margin to the brand, they can give great deals to the customer. They can give huge commissions to creators. Really, everybody wins. The only people that lose in this trade are the very marketplaces that are hurting everybody else.
right. Yeah. So without getting too nerdy on it, though, it would appear it's a much less profitable thing. How do you think about that as a business?
Yeah, so for us, the good news is that there's so many ways for us to quote unquote monetize here. So we
Okay.
don't have to gouge on the fees because we're just facilitating a conversation between the brand and the consumer. So we make a few, points on that transaction. When the
Okay.
brand and the creator, they do their deals and their bit, and we give the creator security that they will get paid because we serve as an escrow agent. We've built this machine learning platform where we've decoded influence. So if a brand wants to work with a creator, our technology will match the two of them with statistical significance so that the brand's marketing dollars are spent wisely. So like everybody wins there, and then when that deal takes place between creator and brand, we take a few points there. And we're building this fully decentralized shipping network where we can give great shipping rates and get product to the customer faster with great rates, and then we'll make a few shekels there. So we're instead of getting, I feel like this that whole like adage of pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered.
Right.
Our position was, hey, if we just create so much value for brands, creators, and consumers, then us taking the small percentages that we do at scale, everybody's winning, and we could build a very profitable business.
Makes sense. So, I mean, you described the name of the company. There's definitely freedom is definitely a word I can tell you wake up thinking about, you go to sleep thinking about, spend the day thinking about, and that's good for society, if you will. But I know there's some other ways, this is the Generous Business Owner podcast. So it's like, what are other ways you think about it? Obviously, this is a good thing for the consumer. It's a good thing for your sort of customer, if you will, the brands. So there's lots of ways this is sort of benefiting all kinds of constituents. But beyond that, I know you do some other sort of missional things. What are some other sort of missional things that you kind of think about?
We free slaves. So one of the things I'm really, really passionate about is freeing slaves. Jeff, years ago, I when I learned through a friend that there are more slaves alive today or missing than any other time in human history, I was stunned. We spend a lot of time as a society talking about, and many are talking about righting the wrongs and reparations for the African slave trade, which obviously was extraordinarily atrocious. But there are more women and children enslaved today than any of those periods combined. And when I found that out and validated it, I just got sick to my stomach. And I'm like, well, why are we not talking about this? Like, why? Like, who's standing in the gap trying to find these children and these women that are in bondage and learning that the fastest growing segment is not just for child, I don't want to use the words online, right?
Yeah.
What they do with children. But, organ harvesting is now the fastest growing segment for medical tourism in multiple countries, that children are being abducted or raised for the sake of their organs being removed and sold to people that are going throughout the world for organ transplants. So the
Wow.
list goes on. And when I learned about all these things, similar to, if not me, who, and if not now, when, I said, we need to do something about this. So, we've been, kind of underground, building safe houses and an entire infrastructure in the Dominican Republic, doing a lot with Haitian refugees, a bunch in Southeast Asia, where, these pretty impoverished areas where we have the ability and the resources to go rescue children and provide a safe harbor for them. And, we've kind of trained up these little network of pastors to become perpetrators, and they go and negotiate deals, and we get these kids as if, we were just purchasing them, but instead of them going to being absolutely going through some of the most horrific things that a human could imagine, they get taken to a safe house and they get truly freed and liberated and taught and fed and educated, and now they have a future and a hope. And you're asking me this question because you know me, but this is not something that we publish or talk about. This is
Yeah.
actually this is the first time I'm ever talking about it publicly.
Yeah.
Because I feel like what we do in private is honoring of the Lord, and I'm not seeking recognition for it. But I do feel, given the nature of, your work in this podcast, that businesses should not exist so that one day they could do good. That businesses should exist
Right.
to do these things.
Yeah. It feels like you're really trying to build something for the long haul here. Um, and this word freedom, I mean, you've already said it 50 times, like God has you focused on that word. It's just fascinating. Where do you think have you thought about why you're
Yeah, I do.
so,
And again, especially in my studies of the ancient text, um, the theologies that Christ came to help us manage our shackles better,
mm,
is a fraud doctrine. And entire religious systems, Christian religious systems, have been built around this premise that you're filthy rags and you're this wretched person, and Christ came so that you could manage your sin better. But he
mm,
was, but he wrote through Paul pretty clearly that, shall we continue in sin so that grace increases? God forbid. And so to me, when I look at Christ, I mean, he's a chain breaker. He who set us free we are free indeed because of him. And I know he set me free from, all of that. And there's an open invitation for him to set every single person on this planet free, and he's fully accounted for everyone. And so that's been, the major motivator for me is how do we, build companies that glorify him, that bring more people to him, that free the slaves, that stand in the gap for those who are oppressed. So, I guess as a kid, I left out, that whole like being the South Bronx kid where, my brother and I, we were the minority, right, in the South Bronx. And having, I don't know how many fights I was in as a kid. I mean, countless. And where I got to the point where I became like the bully's bully, in high school when the bully was picking on the lesser of the kids, man, I would go right after that bully and take care of business. And now I feel like I live my life just picking out the bullies, right? Like who are the bullies that are pushing the little guys around that maybe don't have the fortitude to stand up for themselves? And I said, send me in, coach. and I get to wake up every day picking fights with some of the nastiest, most toxic bullies in the world.
hey man, there it is. One of the fun things that I love doing in these conversations is seeing how God uses our backgrounds, no matter how wonderful or painful or a combination thereof,
So no
uh,
doubt.
in turning that stuff into our greatest ministry. And I just think I, everybody who is watching this on YouTube or listening on the treadmill, okay, they can hear your voice and they know that's who you are.
Straight up.
Like
No doubt.
when you were 13 years old, I literally have a picture of the school hall at the top of the stairs, and where the bully's kind of hanging out in the corner where the teachers can't see, but all the kids know what's going on. And you
So
walking into that deal,
hopefully
100% can see that.
somebody, one of the apartment buildings we lived in when I was a kid was on Digney Avenue in the Bronx. And walking home from school, I don't know how many times we get jumped. And I had a black eye and a fat lip.
Yep.
And my same Uncle Frank, who's like, was one of my 3 dads growing up, surrogate dads. And he's like, what happened to you? It's like, I got jumped again. So I tell him the story. He goes, listen, I got to teach you how you deal with this. I'm like, what do I do, Uncle Frank? He says, when you're going to get jumped, right? He goes, because you're walking down the street, you're getting eyed up, people cross, guys cross, you feel it. Like you could feel
See it coming.
You
Yep.
see it coming. You could feel the hair, like,
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, okay. I said, I know what that feels like. I just felt that yesterday. He goes, here's what you do. Don't ask a whole lot of questions. Pick the biggest one in the group, right? And what's about to happen. And right before it's going to happen, You pick the biggest one in the group and crack him as hard as you can in the nose. And don't stop hitting him until he stops moving. And he goes, watch what happens. I'm like, that's all you got to do? He's like, yeah. What about this? What about, here I'm thinking I got to be like Karate Kid. He's like, no, you don't have to do any of that. Just pick the biggest one in the group and watch what happens. Well, 4 or 5 days later, my brother and I, they steal our shoes, steal our backpacks, steal our hats, whatever. And we're walking and we're like, man, we're like 150 yards away from the project building. And I'm like, man, I got to get in there. And dudes across the street. It's not the first time I've got jumped and beat up by these kids. And there's one kid, his name was TJ. I won't mention, I don't know his last name, but his first name was TJ. He was the biggest neighborhood bully. And a few months prior, he put a sawed-off shotgun in my face and stole a BMX bike that I got for my birthday. He's like, well, this is easy prey. So he came across the street, and I put myself in a position where he couldn't go anywhere. And as soon as he came from the other side of this car, man, I let him have it. And I didn't stop. And you know what? 7 of them ran away. And I called my uncle that night. And I asked my mom to call my uncle, and I said, hey, Uncle Frank, guess what happened? It worked. I hit the big guy, and all 6 of them ran away. And he goes, I told you, next time the big guy shows up, crack him first. So that's how I've lived my life, Jeff.
Well, I just think it's just amazing. I know there's some painful times in that for you, and I know you don't wish that on your kids to have to do that, or anybody's kids. But that's what you went through, and there's a couple of ways to handle that, right? You could be bitter about that and blame the environment you were in and use it as an excuse not to achieve anything, or you can use it as fuel and and do something good with it. And so I think that's obvious that I love that dot connecting of what man kind of meant for evil, he can use for good. So I just applaud that deal. So just give us a little picture, because I know you're a visionary of what could this look like? And we know it won't look exactly like this. That's not how it works. We're getting our daily manna, but just for fun, for the people listening, and heck, I love hearing you just riff on this stuff. What could this look like 10 years from now?
When you say this, what part of
the business? The business. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, one side of our business, which is the consumer side of the business, I give again a quick story. We had because we bootstrapped this thing, pretty much the whole way. I have the luxury of saying no to things because I don't have a whole bunch of people that have financial interest breathing down my neck currently. And we had a very large strategic aggregator reach out, and I took the call, and I was being respectful, and they put a number in front of me that would have changed my grandkid's life. And my oldest is 18, and he doesn't have any kids yet, so it would have been a pretty significant moment. And this was almost 2.5 years ago, when the company was a third of its size today. And I received the term sheet, and I was very grateful. I said, thank you so much, but guys, I'm having way too much fun. What am I going to do, right? Just go fishing? I might like to fish, but I'm still having way too much fun. So, Stephen, we believe that Truly Free Home should be on every store shelf, and we could fulfill the dream that you set off on. So just let us know we can come back for you. I said, I don't think you understand. You're not coming back for me. I'm coming for you.
Right.
Like, when you stop putting toxic chemicals on children, I promise you, I'll leave you alone. But until that point, I have a moral obligation to the world to eat your lunch. So how about we just collaborate on reforming a very, very dangerous and toxic industry together? How about that? Let's collab. We'll call you back. My phone hasn't rung yet. So I think that there's so many consumers that are now being awakened to how toxic the supermarket is, right? Maybe not the perimeter of the supermarket that much, although there's no shortage of toxicity in the produce aisle and in the dairy aisle and the meat aisle. I'll leave those out, but at least that's somewhat real food if it's not genetically modified and sprayed with carcinogenic chemicals. But really the center of the supermarket needs to be reinvented. And I think there's as many startups and entrepreneurs that are creating solutions. There's that many more consumers entering into the market. So I'm very optimistic that I think in the next decade, we are going to fundamentally see the food system and the supply chain system be reformed, not because entrepreneurs became or big companies become philanthropists, but because they were left no choice because so many consumers started voting differently with their dollars and they have to pivot, or guys like me are going to eat their lunch. So I'm very optimistic that at the speed that consumers are changing their buying behaviors, that the startup and entrepreneurial community is answering the mail and the big companies are not, and they're about to get their clock cleaned. So this idea that capitalism works, I think we're seeing it at work right now, Jeff, and I'm very optimistic for the future.
I love it, man.
On the truly free side, right, the social commerce market side, I think we're about to see a very massive pendulum swing, especially when it comes to the social world. I think right now, think about this. You and I are going to have an hour-long conversation. Your team is going to spend hours slicing and dicing, creating all this content. And let's just say between my time and your team and my team's time and your team's time, there may be a dozen to 20 plus human hours that are going to go into the production of this one piece of content in all of its shapes and sizes. But if we went and started to make a cup of coffee, by the time the coffee is made and before it gets cold, we can produce 500 pieces of content without the coffee ever getting cold if you're a good prompt engineer. And I think what's about to happen is people are about to get very disenfranchised. The same way the supermarket aisle is getting reinvented, I believe social is about to get reinvented because of at the speed of propaganda, at the speed of content creation, there's going to be a rising up of people, humans, that are going to refuse to be educated, to be entertained, or to be whatevered by a machine. And that's going to create a whole new movement where these big tech social platforms are going to have to find a way to pivot. There's going to have to be a way to govern artificial content and a way to be transparent to the end consumer. So I think people are going to be, that are already starting to vote differently with their dollars, and I think we're about to see a huge movement of people that are going to want to vote differently with their attention, especially as we start going into more political years in the next couple of years. At the speed of propaganda that a few people can prompt, I think there's going to be a huge awakening in the social world. I'm excited about it.
It's cool. Well, I hope it's true. I'm just thinking of some people behind you as we sort of wrap up here. One of the things we always try to do is, maybe leave some breadcrumbs from somebody behind you on this journey, who wants to do something good where, maybe their business is just starting to flourish and they're trying to go, what direction do I go with this? What are some breadcrumbs you could drop for the entrepreneur behind you?
Man, I got so many.
Yeah.
So let me just riff on that because this is a
go for it.
fantastic question. I think one, I think the world needs more conscious entrepreneurs now than any other time in human history. And if you have a calling on your life to do good through commerce, the time is now, and don't let the grass grow under your feet. I think this is a time for people to be asking questions and questioning everything. I think for mission-driven, conscious entrepreneurs that want to really create change in the world that they seek to see, I think there is a consumer, whether that's B2B or B2C or C2C. I think there is a consumer on the other side that feels the exact pain that you do, and you have an obligation in the world to go solve that pain for somebody. If a punk kid from the Bronx who started cooking at a little Italian restaurant can ship 1 million products a month of non-toxic soap in one of the most competitive markets in the world, laundry soap, if I could do it, and having zero experience in the digital commerce world, if I could do it, you could do it too. It doesn't matter what that industry is. So I think the time is right here and right now to take action, because so many people, Jeff, say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And they talk a whole lot of poop and never take action. And I think history will reward the people that hear the call and take action. So I think now is the time. I can keep going, but those are the first few that popped in my heart.
I think just to go for it. If you've got that same still small voice that spoke to you when you went into the church, and you thought maybe it was the pastor, whoever speaking of the music, whatever it was, the Holy Spirit is speaking to people and giving them great ideas, and we have an enemy who's trying to block those ideas. So I think you're just trying to free them,
no doubt,
to pursue that idea, right?
Love it.
So, well, Stephen, we could go forever, man. This is just, I love talking to you. I love your attitude, and you're a protector by nature, and you love freedom. And so just thanks for making my day today with this conversation.
Very much ditto. The world needs more guys like you, Jeff, right, that are providing hope and guidance to those that need it most. So keep up the good work, my brother. We need more of you out there.
Thanks, man. Thanks for being on. And thanks, everybody, for joining this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. Share it with a friend, subscribe on YouTube, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.